a mentionable distance. The interesting thing about it, the name of that comet was Apophis, or Apophis.
Yeah.
From the Egyptian afterlife idea that a snake chases the dead pharaoh for 24 hours. But again, there's a snake coming into to hunt.
Yeah.
And that's why I wonder if it's not a little bit from Egyptian mythology too.
Well, sure. I mean, it's kind of like the other question, like, where does this come from? Jung's going to say it comes from the collective unconscious, so all these dragons and stuff are there. Anthropologists are going to say, well, I need to see, some more demonstrable evidence from this world. But yeah, I mean, we do treat snakes this way.
The 2012, which you just pointed out, with Quetzalcoatl, the serpent snake. It's supposed to return a third Christ, he was supposed to return.
Yes.
But
why do we care?
Huh?
Why do we care?
What?
Why do we care, do you think?
Why do we care?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay. Do you have another question?
No, but it's interesting because I thought of that when you were talking about the snakes and the flying snakes and the.
Yeah.
Because the Mayan have that also symbolism that Quetzalcoatl was the serpent god.
Yeah, that's Aztec, but yeah, there's Mayan. There's a plumed serpent in the Mayan symbology too. Yeah, I mean, let me answer my own question. I care when I am ready to give up. That's when I care. I'm like, bring it. Just burn it down. I'm ready to give up. I don't see any hope. And so, yeah, I want to see asteroids. I want to see aliens. Something come and start this crap over again. That's why I want to. Yeah.
The female image.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly, you were saying when this turn within the concept of snake and woman,
Yeah.
life force, life giving,
Yeah.
life evolution. At this writing, when was this period again when the Revelation was being written?
Yeah, 95 to 96 CE or AD.
So that was still prior to the churn before the image of woman and snake became.
Oh, it's much later. Yeah.
It's later then.
Yeah, much later.
So,
Yeah.
and this is going back to that idea of woman and snake. When did that churn actually start happening?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
because in the Bible,
Right.
New Testament, Old Testament, a lot of acts of women are negative in the way they're talked about, or the woman is always seen as the bother, right?
Yeah, like menstruation. How dare you menstruate?
Yeah. So what happened in that period where women actually played a very significant role as holding families together?
Yeah.
Child giver, child bearer, all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
What happened so that that woman became such a mark of even death in those writings?
Yeah. Well, what we think happened is writing happened. So the stories that had been circulating orally, which are like an unknown universe to, well, not unknown, but we do know that there were powerful goddesses from archaeological evidence and from remnants in texts. But they're remnants because writing was the province of men. So, great question. I can almost pinpoint the date when this happened officially, and it's with the writing of Genesis, which is about the 6th century BCE, when a group of priests decided they needed a new creation story. And so they retold the story of the woman and the serpent and flipped it. Great question. Yeah.
So Moses did not write the story of Genesis. It was written by a group of priests.
Of priests. According to biblical scholarship, it's I don't want to bore you with it too much, but it's the JEDP break it up, you break the Hebrew Bible up by the use of the term for God. So some writers use Yahweh or Jehovah. Some writers use El or Elohim, which is a Babylonian word, right? And then there's the priestly documents with, and again, I don't mean to complicate this, but you can basically see this because some of the stories repeat. So for example, there are 2 creation stories in Genesis 1 through 3, 2 very different ones. This is not stretching, just draw it out. Take Genesis 1 and draw out what happens when, and then take Genesis 2 and draw out what happens when. It's 2 different stories. There are 2 different flood stories merged from 6 through 9. Again, I don't want to bore you with all this, but yeah, that's the biblical scholarship position.
Okay, so with this knowledge that we all just acquired, which is, you would say that the writer John of the book of Revelation is like an unreliable narrator who hates women? Or he's like an angry person?
Well, you know, it's funny.
It's an anxious text, right?
Yeah, it's funny you mention that because Tina Pippin, the scholar I quoted, says this is the most misogynistic text in the Bible, certainly, and maybe in other ways, because the woman is used to represent the whore of Babylon.
So with this school, right, and then you're coming up with a book on how to live, would you say, like, right, like what was the, earlier, you were like talking about you're coming up with like a book on how to live?
No, I'm doing a course.
A course, right, on how to
Yeah.
live. So would we use this, like, just kind of be like, well, the book of Revelation sucks, and it's just too serious, or just too, like, messed up, so let's just kind of disregard the text and then bring in a new age of, like, chillness?
Well, that's a good point. Let's step back from that point. First of all, the Christian church did not know what to do and wanted to do, let's not include that in the New Testament. And Martin Luther did not want it in the New. He's like, this book is nothing about Christ. That's Martin Luther in 1534 saying, I don't want this book as part of it. And remember, he was the founder of the Protestant Reformation, so he was doing a new Bible. He was doing a new German Bible. He's like, nope, not going to include that. So there's that. There's a Christian church saying, I don't want this. On the other hand, there are people saying, I love this, And I think we need to ask why they love it. I know I loved it. There was a time when I loved it because it solved everything. It was bloody and it was gory, but it's like, yeah, all right, you to hell, you to heaven, binary, done.
Sounds like Breitbart or like ultimate fake news type where it's just like spewing whatever. I think it's like creates a violence that people are satisfied with.
I think it creates a culture of fear, which is very useful. No?
Well, it's useful if you have an agenda.
Well, yeah.
For power.
Right.
Well,
Now, the other thing I want to say is, think about this too, because I think we're all interpreters of the book of Revelation. I think whenever we feel hopeless, I think it's that simple. If you feel hopeless about the world, then you're a step away from apocalypse and apocalyptic thinking. Yeah.
there's just so much in holy text about rebirth.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is the most violent, and it's kind of like a Stockholm syndrome where it's like once you're at nothing, it's like, oh well, that's why you need this, and like so you're reborn into
Right.
like believing the text again.
Yeah, that's right. We're going to clear all this stuff out.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. Now, I don't know if anyone was here. Last quarter we did world religions, and I talked about the sacred and Native American religions. So that was, I don't want to repeat that lecture here, but basically we talked about Vine Deloria's book, God is Red, where he says that Native people, indigenous people, have a sense of the sacred that is not based on time. And if it's not based on time, it's based on space. And if it's based on space, it changes everything, because space doesn't change, but time changes. If you're a time-based religion, you've got to have an ending, right? Because if you're a time-based religion, you have a plot to history. You have to. That's the nature of a religion based in time. So the question is, like the Truman Show, how's it going to end? Right? Why don't we just say, oh, you know, and it was so sweet and everything happened cool and everybody got to go to heaven? Why don't we just say that? Did you have your hand?
Or did you finish?
I think so. Did I finish, Martin?
Yeah.
No, go ahead if I didn't let you finish. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm kind of just understanding, just by knowing this stuff, it's kind of like dated texts, but the culmination of wisdom over time, because I mean, a lot of the symbolism goes back for so long. I mean, I look at a tarot deck, right, and there's like Women of Cups and all that shit like that.
Yeah.
So, well, no, I'm just gathering. I'm continue this slide.
Okay, it does go back. That was one of my main points, is that we know these monsters, but they've been repurposed for this particular story.
Ooh. What's the deal with Satan being thrown down to earth, and does he walk among us? And like, what's the idea of like? Never.
Satan's in the pit. I mean, well, okay.
The whole pit.
What do you mean exactly?
Well, like I said, seeing is believing. You can just look at anything and say it's what you want it, right? But then you need other
Well,
people
no,
to follow
no,
you.
because remember I said you can't be a rogue interpreter,
Yeah.
right? It's not relativism.
Okay. Cool.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
So, I guess Genesis is the brainchild, and bringing in the story of the serpent is the brainchild of these various priests in the 6th century BC.
That's right.
So is it true that around 1400 AD, they twisted the story even more, and the story of Eve biting into an apple was not really true? It's not, the sacred fruit was not really an apple.
You know, I don't think it ever was an apple. I don't think there are apples in the Middle East.
Exactly.
That's part of it, had been a pomegranate or something.
Right. That's what I've heard is that it. But I think you're right. I think it got told as an apple at some point. Probably, well, no doubt, when Christianity spread into Greece and Asia Minor, where there were apple orchards. Excellent point. Yeah. Well, first of all, I mean, why would people want to know if there's a real tree and a real fruit? This is simple. It kind of takes away from the power if you're looking for an actual tree.
What was the forbidden fruit then years ago?
Years ago, you mean at the beginning?
Well, according to the Old Testament.
Oh, I think they were probably referring to a pomegranate within
That
it.
is forbidden.
But that's my point. It doesn't matter what's forbidden, whether it's a pomegranate or an ear of corn. The fact that it's forbidden is the symbol, right? So once you cross into that transgression, that's what transgression means, then now you die, right? Because that's what the story says. Not only do you die, most people don't remember this, but there's a flaming cherubim. The cherubim's not flaming, sorry. The sword the cherubim holds is flaming, keeping Adam and Eve from coming back to the garden, because all they have to do is keep eating from the tree of life, and they'll keep living. But they've eaten from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, so they must die. So the solution is to block the way with an angel with a flaming sword. But, again, you can talk about angels and swords, and what's the story? The story is we're trying to get back, all of us. We're trying to get back to a time like childhood, where we didn't know good and evil.
Get back to where you once belonged, just to bring it back to the White House.
That's right. We are Stardust. No, I mean, if you interpret that story that way, it has meaning for everyone. If you're arguing about where the rivers are, okay, go ahead, but where's the meaning for you in that? And that's what I'm suggesting for the book of Revelation. I hate this book. It's horrible. It's spectacle. It's bad spectacle. And it's judgmental and unimaginative despite all the imaginative products. But it's also me. It hits me because I give up hope. And when I give up hope, I am tempted to start judging. Right? You suck. You deserve to die. I am righteous. Yeah.
Isn't there another religion, or they found somewhere in some text that was several hundred years older than
Yes.
John of Patmos' text, which was an earlier version of
Yep.
basically his version.
That's right.
But it was almost, it's like he was rewriting or Stephen plagiarizing the story.
That's right. You're talking about First Enoch.
First Enoch.
Enoch, which is in what's called the Apocrypha of the Hebrew Bible, which if you're Protestant, you don't have in your Bible. But if you're Catholic, well, I don't know if you have First Enoch. You have some other books in the Bible if you're Catholic. I actually got in an argument with a Catholic about this. I'm like, dude, look at your Bible. It's different. First Enoch, you're right. Thank you for that. Is about 300 years before this. And John is clearly pulling these stock images from First Enoch. It's very similar. Now, Enoch, this is the thing I forgot. Thank you. I was going to tell you earlier and I forgot. Pseudepigrapha. P-S-E-U-D-I, whatever. False writing. False writing. Common practice. We would call that copyright infringement today, but back in the ancient world, this was common practice. So First Enoch was not written by Enoch, except it carries Enoch's trademark. So who is Enoch? Enoch was the guy in Genesis who went into heaven, just kind of disappeared. That guy. I mean, there was another guy, but that was the first guy. His son is Melchizedek. He just disappears. Hey, if I want a pseudonym to write under, and I'm writing Apocalypse, I'm going to use Enoch. Greg Enoch. The Apocalypse. Right? It's brilliant. And they knew nothing of... Remember, writing's not pervasive, and it's relatively new. So it's like, yeah, I mean, I'm going to use some famous person's name to write my book. Probably what's happening with John. Someone wants you to think it's the Apostle John. There's no way it is. But pseudepigrapha. In fact, yeah. Sometimes tell me if I'm giving you too much information. There's the Hebrew Bible, the Tanakh, the Torah, and the prophets, and the writings. And then there's the Apocrypha, which is these books that are, some of which are in the Catholic Bible, but not in the Protestant Bible. And then there's a whole series of texts called the pseudepigrapha. And there are legion, there's so many of them. And John was drawing. All right, go ahead. Yeah.
I love it's fascinating how the human brain works with the initial poem that you put up there.
Oh, yeah.
And we've all heard interpretations of what 666 is. It's
Yeah.
Like someone said because you need to have a stamp affixed so that you can eat and live in the new, under the new regime.
Right.
And they made the Visa sign. You know, they show where the VI is a 6 and the S is a symbol of a 6 and the A. It's fascinating.
That's the late great Planet Earth. He
that's
talks
from
about
that?
codes. I'm like, dude, it's just coins. Coins do the same thing, and they have an image of the image.
And I remember when Reagan was shot and
Yeah.
he came back to life and he was saying that, you know, he was the Antichrist or the God, Magog, I forget.
Yeah.
But could you address God in Magog since you mentioned it earlier?
Sure. This is from Ezekiel 37. Ezekiel was one of the prophets writing in response to Babylon. By the way, it's after 8:30, so people feel free to go. You won't bother anyone or me. So Ezekiel's writing in response. He's writing in exile in response to the Nebuchadnezzar and Babylon destroying the southern kingdom of Israel. It's a brutal time. And I don't know if you remember, if you've read this, but I think it's chapter 37 has this Valley of Dry Bones scene, which is pretty amazing. I mean, I wish some of these prophets had CGI. It would have been amazing. So Ezekiel, in the spirit, in the vision, goes to this Valley of Dry Bones, bones scattered everywhere. And God says, Son of man, to Ezekiel, that's the phrase, can these bones live? And I think he said something like, well, if you will it, they will live. And these bones start coming together. And then flesh comes on. And then they stand up. Okay, so is that supposed to be like a real thing? Like, are we supposed to wait and go to some valley, Joshua Tree out there or somewhere and wait? No, look at that metaphor. Look at that symbol. It's so powerful. Israel will live again. They seem dead now, but they will live again. Yeah.
I just feel like a lot of people have a hard time, like non-poets or non-artists. I mean, don't get me wrong if there's like some intellectuals in there. I don't know, like with symbolism versus just being told, like for face value. Like I feel like poetry is pretty much like it's still around. Obviously, poetry's like here, but like believing and seeing, interpreting art and everything like that is like lost amongst like large populations of people today because they're just seeing what they.
Are you being a snob?
No, I just feel like if everything is based on symbolism,
right,
that gives more choice to yourself or like more freedom for yourself, which then will kind of like reduce the anxiety or fear of.
Oh, knowing that.
Yeah,
it liberates you.
Yeah, it liberates
yeah, okay.
you.
Oh,
You know, give art museums to the kids or whatever, but like, it's mostly because we're stuck with a landlord dude, Trump, who is just saying things that people are taking it for face value. So like, I'm just trying to think of a solution here.
Well, I mean, that's Stanley Fish's point, is that there's no face value. There's always symbolic.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Right? And actually one of the greatest linguistic tricks is the notion of face value. This just means what it means, right? So yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to suggest you were a snob, because I know you're not a snob. Are you smoking a cigarette right
No,
now?
I'm about
okay.
to.
All right.
Greg and Mug Greg.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, God. Charlie, I'm sorry. I got going. Gog and Magog. So Gog and Magog are the opposers in Ezekiel of Israel. So it's some version, it's some kind of Babylonian. I think Gog is the king and Magog is the land. I think that's right. And so this is another veiled calypso. This is another veiled reference to Babylon. Sorry, Charlie. Thank you for bringing me back home. Right.
Minor point. The scattered bones in the valley coming together and standing up.
Yeah. You know this story?
Well, no, but it recalls to my mind a scene from Jason and the Argonauts.
Yeah. Towards the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was bizarre, but it was really...
he has a bag of their teeth.
Uh-huh.
They're actually teeth.
Fights the skeletons.
Yeah, the skeleton
And he
fight.
scatters them, and the teeth raise up as skeleton warriors.
Oh, yes.
It's a beautiful
I've
scene.
totally forgotten that,
Yeah.
yes.
It's actually, what is it, 60 years old, but it kind of still holds up. When you see
Yeah, it does.
It's pretty impressive.
It is
Yeah.
impressive.
Yeah, well, that's, a basic image of rebirth and starting over, right? Yes, sir.
So Israel will live again.
Yes.
So take me back to some ancient writings. If I remember right, sometime in the past, Israel was renamed. It was basically, what is it, the family of Jacob, I think it is.
Right, Jacob is renamed Israel.
And Israel is supposed to be the combination of Isis, the sun god Ra, and Elohim. It's like hyphenation of three different.
Oh, yeah, I've read that too. IS is for Isis and Ra
And
for Egypt, the sun god, and El from the. I did read that somewhere, yeah.
But
Except that's in English, so I don't know.
But is that part of the story of how, when did Israel get renamed from the Jacob lineage?
Yeah, that's in like Genesis 25. No, it's later than that.
So that's the third book of Genesis?
Oh, you mean the third? There's actually more. Yeah, I'm talking about the chapter. It's like, yeah, yeah. It's later on in the story, and then of course he has 12 children. So the 12 tribes. Yeah, he and his wife, of course. Right. Yes.
Does the 12 of the 12 tribes have anything to do with the 12 astrological symbols?
Yeah, I don't know, but we like 12. We like that number. What do you think?
Me?
Yeah. You think there might be some connection?
I mean, it.
Yeah. I don't know either. But I do know this, that as we telescope back into the past, that this complexity starts to look more like a singularity, and that's true of symbols. Just like we saw the dragon here. That's an old symbol that goes all the way back. Goes all the way back. I don't know if you were here for Theogony. Goes all the way back, not just to the creation of the earth, but to the creation of gods. Right? So yeah, that's what I think. So I would be a bit surprised if there's a relation. Thank you. Yeah.
I think there is a relation, and I
Yeah.
think a lot of it has to do more in terms of once Christianity was taken on by the West, as in the Roman, because there are actually 13 tribes, right? There really were, there's a 13th tribe, as they talk about, like the Coptic going into Ethiopia, and those tribes that were lost from what is now still considered on the western side of things of what is the 12 tribes of Israel.
Are you talking about the rabbis, the
Well,
midrash?
yeah, and specific to the tribes that are Ethiopian Jews or Ethiopians who were from the Coptic religion.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So there were actually 13, but it was this 12 tribe idea and 12 zodiac signs. They definitely, it is part of the idea of creating that sort of like connectivity between Judaism and Christianity.
Sure.
And bonding them together under the umbrella of the Western way of thinking of co-opted religions.
Sure.
So it is really, it is part of that ideology, the whole thing in terms of like connectivity between all these different kind of religions, specifically from that region.
Yeah, there's a movie, and I'm failing to remember the name of it, and Woody Harrelson's in it, and it's a documentary, and they talk about the conspiracy theories of 9/11, but there's this wonderful part in the beginning of how all these religions have the same numbers and the same roots, and how they all come across as perfect. Yeah, Zeitgeist. Yeah, the Zeitgeist movie, and it just how often it's all whether or not that's coming up in Judaism.
And especially for the Western viewpoint, you know, there's different numerology and different tenets and symbolism, obviously in Southeast Asian and Buddhism, so there's a different, and they also don't follow timelines like Western religion. Western religion has timeline on it, but all these other religions are not based on timeline, but space.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's to me, in the end, it's a way of controlling the boundaries of the mind, so it fits within the schism of what you want to present.
We do see a long history of appropriation, especially by Christianity, frankly, of well, of all religions, and especially sacred spaces. So they would come in, and sacred time.
Right.
So Christmas, particular sacred spaces that have been sacred for years,
Sure.
but now have a cathedral or a chapel.
Well, the Spanish did it in all of what is called South America.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, exactly.
Certain saints' birthdays that were close to certain
Yeah,
gods' birthdays.
yeah,
They, over time, fused them together. You
right.
know what I mean? So
Right.
that you have the tribal worship suddenly comes under the umbrella of
Yeah.
Catholicism.
It works the other way too, like you mentioned South America, when Spanish conquistadors came in, and of course the missionaries with them, and they saw icons or images of the Virgin Mary, they were like, oh, we know her. That's the Corn Mother. And they're like, no. I say again, just to your question, that there are reasons for these numbers. There are simpler reasons. I'm not saying that these symbolic reasons aren't true. In fact, they are. But they begin pretty simply. We experienced 12 months, so that's a good place to start with symbolism.
And there's actually 13, though, in mine are 13, because you have, like 21 days.
Oh, you're talking about lunar?
Yeah, well, is that what you're talking about? You said, because you said 12 months.
I'm just saying these numbers mean things in everyday life too. And so that's how you build a symbolism.
There's always really 13, because if the 12,
yeah.
12 disciples, Christ would have been son or the father of disciples, right? Or it seems like to me there's symbolism is
13.
like even when you have the 12 tribes, if there was a father who created the 12 sons,
Oh, yeah.
so he's the 13th.
Yeah,
Figure.
I like that.
And,
Yeah.
and that's what it's fun about. And also it's funny, like the Trump, you said Constantine jumped on the Christian, saying, "Hey, okay, great, it works. It's a good partnership." It's the same thing Trump has done. I don't think he's ever been religious, but all of a sudden he has a partnership with Christianity.
Are you saying Donald Trump is the great whore of Babylon?
Yeah.
Okay. I think we can end there. Thank you. Oh, next week is God's Monsters in Politics.
Now,
That's what he has.
so I got real quick.
Yeah.
So that image you used, which is brilliant, when you describe it, it's like